Load error scrutiny of the church's inaction is mounting after the horrific discovery of the remains of 215 children in unmarked burial sites at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in BC. The fact that there are still church records that have not been revealed is also a sad commentary of the lack of commitment by the Catholic Church to allow us to investigate this further. We need to have that question looked at as well, Sinclair told the committee. Shortly before his testimony, residential school survivor Evelyn Korkmaz told journalists that the time for crocodile tears from governments is over, and the time has come to support Indigenous communities that have for years been pushing to explore the former school locations for unmarked burial sites. As part of that, the Catholic Church, which ran roughly 60% of residential schools, must also recognize its role. The Catholic Church also needs to acknowledge and take ownership to repent and pay for their sins, said Korkmaz at a press conference ahead of a House of Commons debate on an NDP motion urging the government to act. Martin Reicher, an assistant deputy minister with the Department of Crown Indigenous Relations, suggested there's no easy way to get those records from churches until they offer them up. He said federal officials have had conversations with the churches involved in running the schools. As part of these discussions, they have all indicated around the table they are prepared to share the information in their archives. He said residential schools were boarding schools set up by the Canadian federal government and administered by the Roman Catholic, Anglican, United, Methodist and Presbyterian churches as part of a federal policy with the goal of stripping Indigenous children of their culture and identities. Sir John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada, described the intent of the schools as follows: when the school is on the reserve, the child lives with its parents, who are savages, he is surrounded by savages, and though he may learn to read and write, his habits, and training and mode of thought are Indian. He is simply a savage who can read and write. It has been strongly pressed on myself, as the head of the department, that Indian children should be withdrawn as much as possible from the parental influence, and the only way to do that would be to put them in central training industrial schools where they will acquire the habits and modes of thought of white men. Victims forced to attend the schools suffered horrific physical, mental and sexual abuse, but so far, the responses from Catholic Church representatives have ranged from regional apologies to a complete lack of acknowledgement of the Church's role in the system. I am conscious that this tragedy has a significant impact on all Indigenous communities, especially those here in Nova Scotia, he said in the statement. As Archbishop, I want to offer my prayers for these children, their families, and their communities. Acknowledging and bringing to light this dark chapter of our Catholic and Canadian history is difficult but necessary in order to be able to do and be better. Dunn continued, I continue to be committed to all who have been mistreated and hurt by the residential school experience, in which church members participated knowingly or unknowingly. Rev. J. Michael Miller, the current shepherd of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Vancouver, apologized to all First Nations governments, Indigenous communities, families and citizens for the Church's involvement. In a letter released Wednesday, the Church was unquestionably wrong in implementing a government colonialist policy which resulted in devastation for children, families and communities, he said. The Indian Residential School Survivors Society (IRSSS) last week called on Pope Francis to apologize. Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller on Wednesday said he believes the time has come for a papal apology, while Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett said that it's clear Indigenous people want an apology and that it's up to Catholics to urge their church to do better. Mercedes Stephenson sits down with Canada's acting top soldier for the first time. Defence Minister Sarjan welcomes findings of military justice system review. Royal Military College failed to respond to sexual misconduct. Former training head advice on mixing vaccine shots based on goal of not wanting vaccine doses to go to waste. NACI gives green light to mix and match COVID-19 vaccines. B.1.617.2 COVID-19 variant now dominant in United Kingdom. Trudeau calls Air Canada aid package a good and fair deal. Calls grow to find all children lost at residential schools. Trudeau vows action following discovery of 215 bodies at former residential school site. Delivering COVID-19 vaccines in family practices is key to reaching hesitant patients. Calgary doctor answering your questions about COVID-19 vaccines. Calls for a culturally appropriate framework to investigate the Kamloops site and mass graves. O'Toole calls on Trudeau to take immediate action following discovery of mass grave at BC residential school. We're going to fight for justice for you. Jagmeet Singh on residential school burial sites. Trudeau vows concrete action after BC residential school grave discovery.